Hello, I'm Lee Bernick, and I want to welcome you to another edition of the Urban Report. Today we have several guests on, but my first guest is a colleague of mine from the Hank Greenspun School of Journalism and Media Studies, Julian Kilker. Julian, welcome to the show.
Great. Thank you for inviting me.
Well, you're more than welcome. And Julian is an interesting colleague. He's doing very interesting things in terms of both his creative work and then how that ties into some other research that he's doing. Julian's background is technology and photography, and he's recently done two shows, one with the in Geneva and another in the Mojave Desert, right? And he has some slides to show us some pictures of his work. And you want to start out and just give us a little tease about what you've done and everything. Let's talk about the first thing that you've done here. You're doing photography in the desert. Is that right?
Exactly. I'm doing what I call extreme photography. So it's photography under extreme conditions. Being out in the desert on its own is an extreme condition in some ways. But I also take pictures at night under low light conditions, so long exposures under difficult conditions. That's sort of the overriding goal for this particular project.
Okay, and so you have it on the screen. We have it on the screen right now, and these are, would you want to talk about these pictures?
Sure. These are a couple of pictures, and I think during our discussion today, we'll be able to talk a little bit about the background and why these particular images are important. But these four images here are a selection of the images I've been taking, the types of pictures I've been taking. And most of them are from the Mojave Preserve, which is an area between Las Vegas and Los Angeles, an area where a lot of people will drive through on I-15, Interstate 15, and not even take a look at. It's like flyover country for drivers in this area. And I started this project when I started noticing these abandoned buildings and these areas that looked really intriguing to me, and I thought I'd step out and take a look at them. And I began to realize that there are very interesting elements of the desert that many of us overlook. And so my goal was to try and document these in a way that was visually interesting.
Okay. And out of that work, if I understand it correctly, you again, two things. One is you've done some research out of this and you've gotten some articles. And the other is that you have some again, exhibits, one in the Mojave and then one in Geneva. Do you want to talk about how these two interact and relate to each other and how you, again, got started in this?
Sure. I've been interested in the combination of technology and science and creative endeavors for quite a long time. My own background is in physics at the undergraduate level, and then when I went to graduate school, I worked in a media lab where we worked with technology and creative elements. And I've been very interested in particularly the design of media technologies. And so my dissertation, going way back, looked at standards development, how are standards developed? And then more recently I've had articles that look at control and the design of control in media technologies. So that issue on your DVD player when you try and fast forward past something and it says, no, sorry, you can't do that. I was looking at the standards development for that as well. So I've been very curious about how media are designed, how they're shaped in a way, and not just how content can be developed for media like television media or radio media. So I've been really interested here in looking at photography as a medium and how we're pushing the limits of media technologies. And it came out of a project I did a couple of years ago, which is on the screen right now, the digital dirt and the entropic artifact. And I was really curious about, as we switch from old-fashioned photography or photochemical photography to digital photography, how we understand that switchover in different ways. And I was particularly at that point interested in how we represent damage. And this morphed into a project which I'll talk more about today, which is this idea of documenting the desert and trying to sort of push the extremes of photography and looking at the technology itself.
Okay. And so let's see if we can get another copy. Now this is another article. We put up here an article, another one that you did on the somewhat similar kinds of issues, but just demonstrating that you can take creative work and it relates very much to traditional scholarly research, but more importantly in some ways, and I hate to say that in a sense, is that you like to talk about, and we'll get back to this, how it really is science and there's a science and technology, and that we could become here a center for innovation on digital photography or digital, the
Media,
the
yeah.
media, right? And that's one of the things that you're looking at. So while there's this creative aspect, there's also a very, I hate to say it's very practical kind of thing that says, how do we understand how to use these
Right.
this technology?
This is a pragmatic project, and it's enjoyable from the creative side, but I'm also very interested in, again, the shaping of the medium, and in order to study that part of it, the more practical, sort of pragmatic side, I needed to practice the photography myself. So in a sense, if you want to call it a participant observation project or maybe a slightly ethnographic project, I decided to go all the way through and use the technologies and then go to the end, essentially, in terms of doing an exhibit, getting an exhibit approved, and then putting on an exhibit to learn about the entire process.
So can we look at some more of the pictures? And I think,
Sure.
now this is a picture, again, in the Mojave Desert, right?
Right. This is an example of the technology that I use to capture the images, and then I'll show you a couple of pictures that I've captured using this technology. So the system here is, it's basically sunset, the light is going down, it's low light, and I have a rig here that's basically tracking and moving across the landscape. And so this is actually a computer-controlled system that is based on hobbyist materials. I didn't build this one myself, but I'm modifying it myself.
Okay. So on the right-hand side of this picture that we see up here is your camera. Is that right? And
That's right, yeah.
It's
It's a very low tripod, and then there's a box on
Right.
top of it which allows the camera to move.
Right.
And then there's the camera on top of that.
Okay.
And it's all computer-controlled and does basically sort of a long exposure or time-lapse exposure,
Right.
depending on the project.
and you have another one. So this is another part of your technology to try and capture these wonderful
Desert
scenes,
conditions.
these desert
Yeah.
conditions.
And this one is much more simple. There's no sort of, well, there is a computer behind the scenes, but in the image itself, you see there's a very tall tripod. And one of the challenges in the desert is trying to get a different perspective. If you're out in the desert, usually you'll have the brush almost at eye level, and so it's very tough to get a building such as the one that you see in this particular image that we're looking at. And so in this case, I had to build a rig that I could put very high up and yet control from within my vehicle and sort of monitor what was going on. So the idea of coming up with technical solutions, often on the fly, is something that's very common for photographers. A lot of photographers have had developed systems that allow them to capture the images they're trying to capture. And it can be quite challenging sometimes.
Okay.
So next I have a couple of the results
All right,
of
let's
these
look at the
techniques.
results because they're fantastic. So this is at night, right?
This is at night.
And is this a time?
This is a long exposure. So
Long
we're talking
exposure.
about 2 minutes here. And one of the themes, each of these pictures that I decided to show today has a theme, and I'll try and talk about those themes very briefly because I could talk for
Right.
quite a while about these.
Right.
One of the themes that's really interesting to me here is I took this picture because of the graffiti in this location. This is right next to the interstate, one of the locations that I periodically stop off at. And I was really attracted by the graffiti. It says, "Memories from the Fourth Apocalypse." And I didn't notice in the background, perhaps viewers can see this, that there's a shoe. If you look through the doorway, there's a shoe balanced on the furniture out there. And for me, this was an example of not necessarily being able to see the entire scene when I'm capturing it, but that there are elements quite often that we overlook. And since I also teach one of our research methods classes, I was really struck by this idea of how do you capture as much information as possible in the scene and then go back and perhaps analyze it after the fact. And this
Okay.
was an example of one of those pictures.
All right.
This case is the same scene that we saw earlier with the camera that was on the computer-controlled rig. This is that leaning shack that's actually in the SEMA intersection in the Mojave Preserve. And you can see up in the corner there are some electrical wires that are going across diagonally in the screen.
And what time of day is this one?
This is nighttime also.
Night-
This is about
nighttime.
8 o'clock at night, and the sun has been set for about 2 hours in this case. You can see the star trails there, and by the length of them, you can see this is about a 1 to 2 minute exposure.
Okay.
So, yeah. So a lot of these are quite bright, and people often think that they're in the daylight because there's actually moon light in this case. And it just shows how incredible the cameras we have now are because we can capture relatively low light conditions and make it look almost like daylight.
Okay.
This is at a place called Walking Box Ranch, which UNLV manages. Actually, it's near Searchlight, Nevada. And this is some cholla that's basically growing up inside of basically an old wooden vehicle. And it just, for me, it captures, I was trying to capture sort of Western visual elements on this ranch as part of a project, actually, that I was working with the Public Lands Institute. And for me, this is a compelling picture because this vehicle here, this cart, has been collapsing, and I've gone back several times, and each time I go back, it's in more and more disarray. And for me, that's an example of sort of the rapid decay in the desert-like environments that we have here. So the quick passage of time.
Okay. We have some.
And this is the final image that I wanted to show.
Phone, yeah.
The classic phone. This is almost the loneliest phone in the desert, but it's not. That one was removed because it caused too many problems. And again, this is one of those pictures where I captured the phone and cars going by. There's some light trails from cars going by, but you can also see there's this odd object stuck to the side of the phone. And on closer inspection, it turned out that somebody built a Lego camera and super glued it to the side of the phone. But for me, what's important is that nobody would see this unless they stopped and were in my position, had my perspective. None of the cars going by could see that something was done there.
Yeah, well, you know, that's one of the interesting things in some ways, is that photography allows us to see things that, you know, that we so often miss.
Exactly.
Because we're so hurried in terms of going places. And so you're detailing and reminding us about what's out there, really. Let's look at, you have some pictures. We have a few more minutes, but you have pictures of your exhibits, where you were at, right? So let's talk about.
I just wanted to add one more thing here, that if you do see, this is an example of research methods here, that if you have small objects that are changing over time, you can actually see those changes because they appear and disappear in the photos. So there are actually ways to use these images in terms of
research
quite effectively. So I showed these pictures first at Kelso Station in the Mojave Preserve, which is a beautiful renovated train depot. I highly recommend that people visit there if they can.
This is part of the National Park Service.
Part of the National Park Service, and this was sponsored by the National Park Service. So it's really an impressive location. And they have an art exhibit space in the building where they have visiting artists, rotating artists, and my work was there in 2011.
Okay.
And then shortly after that, I applied for and got permission to exhibit in Geneva, Switzerland. And this is a facility, this is a sort of an overview of the Geneva area. And Geneva surrounds the end of a lake. It's called Lake Le Mans. And in the middle of that area, where the river is sort of emerging from the lake that we see there, there's a building right here that's on the right side, which used to be the building where drinking water, because they had drinking fountains in the city, drinking water was taken out of the middle of the river, because that was the cleanest water, and then pumped to various parts of the city. When they stopped doing that, the building was left vacant, and it was decided to turn it into an exhibiting art area. And Swatch sponsors this location. So it's called Cité du Temps.
So this is what we saw from the aerial view. This is the actual building.
This is the same building.
And this is where your exhibit was. We only have a few minutes, so let's look at the picture of the exhibit.
Sure.
Right.
So the exhibit, they have two exhibit halls, and I was on the right side on the second floor. And so the two exhibits that were going on were mine and another artist's. And this is what the space looked like. This is a panoramic view of the large images. I chose 2 by 2 meter images that I printed out, about 16 of those. And some of the shots are ones that we've seen already. But I decided... But
that's you in Switzerland.
That's me in Switzerland, yeah. And there are windows that are behind the exhibit space, so I was able to actually put these images in front of the windows in interesting ways to have the light shining through. And it was featured in the Swiss media, and we also had an opening reception where a lot of people.
Well, you can't have an exhibit without people. I mean, you know,
that's right.
Right? I mean, but you
absolutely.
did have people come.
Absolutely.
And they saw your work. They saw the wonderful work of this. We only have about a minute or two left. Again, it's really interesting, and it shows the quality of our faculty that you were exhibiting in Switzerland. You know, people think, well, we're in Vegas, but you were able to get to, and people there saw something that they otherwise would not. You took some of these things. Again, this is, we talked about this, but this is a Visual Communication Quarterly. One of the things I find interesting is the fact that you make this transition from creative work into the more traditional research output, right? And then you talked, we have just a short time. Can you give us just a very brief about how this all fits into maybe science and technology and what you're doing there on it?
Sure. One of the aspects of the extreme imaging that I mentioned earlier is the idea that you need to understand the technology you're using in order to do this, and often you need to modify it. And it turns out that a lot of the technologies and a lot of the exploration in this area comes out of very innovative or innovation-oriented communities. For example, Silicon Valley or San Francisco. So one of the rigs I'm using was partially developed in San Francisco and is being used around the world and modified by many user groups who then contribute innovations back to the original source. So what I do when I use these technologies is I'm actually using a lot of technological expertise, but also math in order to figure out how do I shoot this image, how long do I shoot it for, and that varies depending on the circumstances.
Okay. Good. So we have to end here,
Sure.
but I think this is a great example of how we merge creativity and technology at the university. I want to thank you for coming. It's been great. We'll have to come back and talk about this STEM, the science and
STEM
technology,
aspect,
and how you can relate that to a School of Journalism and Media Studies. Thank you for being on this portion of the Urban Report. We'll take a break and have our next guest. Thank you.
Thanks.
For others, it may have just been a summer job. But for me, it was training. Now I'm an Air Force pararescueman, and my job is to save lives. Make the right choices today, and be ready for the challenges tomorrow. This message is brought to you by the U.S. Air Force.
Think you found every hazard out here today? Think again. The spot you missed could be a killer. That spot on your skin could be skin cancer. Fact is, if you're a man over 50, you're in a group most likely to develop skin cancer, including melanoma, the kind that kills one person every hour. 1 in 5 Americans is likely to develop a form of skin cancer during their lifetime. That's why your best shot is to check for a spot. It's easy. Follow through and check your skin. It could be the save of a lifetime. Go to spotskincancer.org to find out how. A message from the American Academy of Dermatology.
Winston, just one more inning, Grandma.
Ever notice how many things today kids can do without actually moving? A whole lot of things their parents used to do the hard way. So many kids' activities today seem to leave out the activity part, which makes exercise even more important for children. In fact, new research tells us the best time to enhance bone development is during childhood and adolescence. And just getting children to walk an extra 35 minutes a day could spare them the pain of thinning bones later in life. Healthy bones come from healthy habits. Encourage your kids to get up, get out, and get moving.
Hello.
Hey, Grandma, how about another grape soda?
A public service message on building strong bones for kids from the Pediatric Orthopedic Society of North America and the American Academy of Orthopedic Surgeons.
Hello, I want to welcome you back to this edition of the Urban Report, and I have 2 more guests today, and it's an interesting pair of students from here at the university, and I have Tyler Mitchell and Kallie Roeser. Is that right, Kallie?
Yes.
And what's interesting is that they are communication students, majors, but that's the real interesting is you're part of the Rodeo team. We have a rodeo team, is that right?
Yes,
at
sir.
the university?
Yes.
And we hear about basketball and we hear about the baseball or football, but you're part of a rodeo team. How many people are on the team?
14.
14. And how many men and how many women are on the team? How many women? Are you the only woman on the team?
No, there's 7 of each.
7 of each. Okay. And where does the rodeo team participate? How many? How many rodeos then do you go to?
There's 10 college rodeos, and most of them are located in California, from the northern parts up in Susanville and Feather River area, Quincy, and all the way down to Norco, California, and then some in the Central Valley as well.
Okay, so they're almost all in California.
Yeah, except for the one that is here in Vegas.
And we have one here in Vegas? Okay, and we sponsor it. The university sponsors it, or what? No.
We have our own sponsors.
Yes.
No. Okay, and so tell me, you travel. How do you have to take your own horses, and I mean, what's the process of doing a rodeo in California?
It's a lot of driving. You take your own horses. There's no option for flying. You have a trailer, your truck, and hopefully a partner that you travel with, and your horses, and you go from rodeo to rodeo.
And you go from rodeo to rodeo. How often are the rodeos? It can't be every week or something.
There's in the professional levels, there's usually 3 or 4 a weekend. Some during the week, depending.
But at your level, at the university level, right?
The university level, yeah, there's only 10, so there's sometimes consecutive weekends.
Okay.
Whether it be rodeos. But.
So now you have your horses. How many horses do you have? Do you have one or?
No, I have 4.
You have 4 horses. And how many do you have?
I have 4.
And you have 4. Okay. So you have 4 horses. Tell me, Tyler, what do you do in the rodeo? You said that you did.
I do 4 events.
4 events.
I steer wrestle, rope calves, team rope, and ride saddle broncs.
And do you use the 4 horses in different way? I mean, do you have I'm
Yeah.
not familiar. I mean, does each horse have a specialty then?
Yeah, definitely. I usually have one for each event, but obviously in the saddle bronc riding, my horse is supplied by the contractor.
Right.
So I usually only have 3 horses at the rodeo at a time. But my 4th horse is a practice horse.
Is a practice horse. And what about you? So you have 4 horses, did you say?
Yeah.
And so how many do you bring with you on a rodeo?
2.
2.
The other 2 are just practice horses.
Just practice horses. And what do? You do the
girls' events.
The girls' events.
Goat tying, barrel racing, breakaway roping, and team roping.
So there are more rodeo events for women, girls, than what we see when you go to the national finals, right?
Yeah.
In the national finals, we only see 1, right? But you have considerably more events than what we see in the traditional. Well, that's interesting. So. Tell me, where do you keep your horses here? I mean,
there's a very nice old man. That's Bill McGinnis is his name, that allows us to keep our horses at his house, and we have a good sponsor of ours that provides an arena for us to practice in nearby. So it makes it easy for the college kids. We all keep our horses in one place.
Okay, but now I think you said we don't get support from the university. Is that right, or do you?
No.
No? Okay. But you do represent, when you go, you represent as a university, is that right?
Yeah.
And how do you win? Do you win? I mean, how many people are on the team? You had 14, is that right?
We're 14 people. But
7 and 7. How many people actually participate in a rodeo?
10.
10.
You get 10 selections, and usually it works to be 6 guys and 4 girls.
Okay. And then how do you win? By how many points you get, and then you just accumulate the team then, or is there?
Yeah, there's in each event, depending on where you place, there's a certain amount of points given for that placing, and at the end of the rodeo, those are all tallied up, and you have individual standings and team standings as well.
Individual and team standings. Okay. And so how have we done? How has UNLV's team done in this whole process?
We're doing quite well right now. Both the men's and women's team are leading the region. So right now we're number 1 in both men's and women's, which is awesome. And then currently we have multiple individuals in the top 5 of all events, including the all-around as well. So. Okay,
so can I ask you how you 2 are doing on this? Are you gonna?
Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm doing good in the breakaway and goat tying. I'm in the top 10.
In the breakaway and the goat tying, you're in the top. I have to plead ignorance. So what is breakaway?
It's the girls, they go rope the calf, and then the rope breaks off the saddle horn. Kind of like the calf roping that the men do, but we don't have to get off our horse.
Oh, you don't have to get off your horse?
Yeah.
Okay. And the goat tying is?
Run down on the horse and tie the goat.
Okay. All right. And now, do you have the barrel?
The barrel racing, yeah.
The barrel racing?
Yeah.
So that one, I sort of understand it because I've seen that one. But okay. But you're in the top 10 in the
goat tying and breakaway roping.
Okay. So how long does some event, I mean, like goat tying, there's like seconds or something like that. How long does it take to do this activity?
Pretty fast. Would probably be like 6.5 seconds, maybe a little lower, but average would be 7 seconds.
7 seconds to 6.5 would be put you in there in terms of winning or placing or something like that, right? Okay. And so that's do you practice this? I mean, when you say you have this arena or something to practice, so you have these other animals then, right, to practice on. Who provides those? Or do you have to pay for those, or is somebody? Do you have a sponsor that?
Those are provided by Rick.
Yeah, our coach Rick Griffith, he gets the cattle, and we get them also donated by Tom Collins, the county commissioner.
Okay.
He raises cattle and lets us
And lets you
practice on
on them. Does he come out and watch or
Oh,
something?
yeah.
Does he? And he's a big fan of this?
Yeah, he is.
Yeah.
He
So
loves
we'll
it.
have to have him in here and talk to him about
Oh,
this.
he'd love to do that.
Yeah, you would love to do that?
Yeah.
Okay. And so tell me, so you're in the top 10, and what did you tell me about where you are in some of the...
In saddle bronc riding, I believe I'm third. The calf roping, I'm fifth. Team roping, I think I'm seventh. And the steer wrestling, I'm first, and I'm winning the all-around right now.
You're winning the all-around. And what do you get for winning the all-around?
There's money, purses.
Oh,
as
there
well.
is money.
Yeah, that's you know, that's
So
a prize.
this is not like just a trophy. You're getting real money.
Yeah, real money, because you pay to enter as well.
Oh,
so,
is that right?
There's
So
an
how
entry
much
fee.
do you have to pay to enter?
I believe it's $65 for the first event, and then $35 for each event after that. Is how the college system works.
Okay.
So.
And so you get a purse and everything. There's one other thing I want to talk to you about the rodeo, and then I want to talk to you about your career at the university.
Yeah.
You talked about the region. Are there other places? I mean, how many regions are
Should
there?
know about that.
There are 11 regions throughout the U.S., and we are in the West Coast region.
Okay. And so if you win here, do you go to, is there a national? And where's the national at?
Casper, Wyoming. They consider it like the Sugar Bowl of college rodeo.
Okay.
The top 3 in each event, and 2 teams that end up placing the highest in the region go back to Casper,
Okay.
Wyoming and compete.
So you might be going to Casper, Wyoming to compete.
We hope.
We hope.
Yes.
Well, that's good. So let me ask you something, though. You're doing this, but you're also students, right?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. And how do you fit in the time to be a student and in this whole process?
Late nights and early mornings.
You know, late nights and early mornings.
Yep.
And what classes? You're in communications, right? So
Yes, sir.
what type of communication studies are you interested in?
To be honest, I'm not really sure right now, but I'm interested in the communication aspect of any kind of business.
Okay. And what about you? What course did you find to be the most interesting so far for you? You're a senior, right?
Yeah, I really liked conflict resolution theory with Dr. Tara Emmer Summers.
Okay.
Yeah, I really like that. And I like Dr. Engstrom, everything she does with like love and romance or nonverbal.
Okay.
It's really interesting.
You found those interesting, the interpersonal relations and things like that. Well, that's good. I just have a few minutes, and I want to thank you both for coming.
Thanks for
Good
having
luck
us.
on your events as you come up. And I want to thank all of you for watching the Urban Report. If you have questions or concerns, feel free to call us at the university at the Greenspan College of Urban Affairs. And thank you for watching the Urban Report.